When I started Spice Capital, it was very intentional for me to make sure I'm including everyone, not just for sake of, but genuinely, if you have new voices, some of the people who've never invested in a startup or in any new asset class before, they don't invest and they do it for the first time. There's so much pride and excitement. They're the best investors. I mean, they're repping whatever they're investing in. They're so excited. They're using the product versus most investors. I'm even guilty of this. Once you've done too many investments, you almost the novelty wears off. I think just bringing people in who have genuine excitement, who've never gotten access, it's so fulfilling. And really it stems from me never wanting to feel the way the finance bros made me feel, like I was less than or I wasn't able to participate. And so no matter what I do in my career, I'm always going to make sure I have a way or an opportunity to bring people in.
Welcome back to Brown Girls Money Moves, where we hear from South Asian women founders and the investors backing them. I'm your host, Bhargavi Varma.
We're back for season 2, and I'm thrilled to welcome Nitya Subramanian today. She's the founder behind Para, a company that is building the infrastructure that makes crypto secure, safe, and accessible around the globe. We're also joined by her investor, Bakhai of Spice Capital. Maya is backed by some industry figures like Marc Andreessen and Alexis Ohanian. In this conversation, we cover everything from how anyone can become an angel investor to why democratizing access isn't just good ethics, it's good business.
Nitya, thank you for joining us today on Brown Girls Money Moves, which, just in a sentence about this podcast, we are really interested in amplifying the stories of founders and the women that invest in them, and women or men that invest in them. In this case, it's amazing to see a screen of both investor and founder being South Asian women. So this is an especially cool episode. But Nitya, can we just start with something where you're at a family gathering and an auntie comes up and obviously always starts with saying something that was totally unsolicited, like you're working too much or something, and then says to you, by the way, Beta, what is this? I hear you're doing something called Para. Can you explain it to me? Can you explain it to someone like her who has no knowledge of the problem, the pain point, and the solution?
Absolutely. And I mean, this is so funny because I remember one of the first kind of extended family friend gatherings after the company came out of stealth. I actually gave my parents a talk track of what kids say that the company does. And so this is just bringing me right back to that moment.
Yeah.
How we like to describe Para is blockchains now offer a faster, cheaper, more efficient way to move information. Nowadays with stable coins, they're a really efficient way to do payments. In order to actually do anything on a blockchain, you need to use public key cryptography. And that sounds complicated because it is. Historically, actually accessing blockchains was really difficult. But Para provides wallets that make it really easy to transact on blockchains. And so we basically make that process of getting the most out of the technology blockchains offer easy and user-friendly.
I'm hearing that there's a seamlessness you're providing. And is that for the customer or is it for other businesses and what they offer to customers?
Yeah, we're B2B2C. So our customers are everything from a payments company. There's a humanitarian aid company that we recently announced our work with, remittance companies, really kind of anyone that needs to provide their end users access to blockchain technology would use Para to make that user-friendly and simple.
And would you say it was one of the first to market to be able to offer it to such a large market?
Absolutely. So when we first got started, blockchains were still, this was in the wake of all of the FTX collapse, information that you heard in the news.
Yep.
We were really building this out at a time where blockchains were very much not the in thing to be doing.
Right.
And a lot of my background was in the fintech space and just recognizing how much more value we could bring back to end consumers by using this technology. And so we've been building for about 3.5 years. And yeah, very much through that process, the notion of what people can use blockchains for has really expanded. The market has really grown.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been interesting kind of building core infrastructure during this time period.
And I want to definitely get into from working in fintech to the move to start something in the blockchain I mean, I'll speak for as an outsider looking in. I wouldn't say that's an automatic jump that, oh, if you work in fintech, you obviously are going to veer in that direction. But I want to come back to that after we ask Maya, I mean, word on the investor street and in the ecosystem is that you want to talk crypto, you want to talk blockchain, you want to talk early to that, you go to Spice Capital. Like that's, I mean, you've talked about
And I go to
this.
Nitya.
which is why conversations like this are perfect. So, can you talk a little bit about, well, Spice Capital and what is Spice Capital and what they invest in? So, what your thesis is,
Mhm.
and then how this came to be, how the investment in Para came to be.
Totally. So, yeah, okay, let me back up. So, Spice Capital is a seed and seed fund, mostly pre-seed, and we're doing all, at this point, we're doing all first yes investing. So, we're typically like one of the first or the first institutional investor into a round. We have 62 companies now, which is crazy to think
Wow.
about. And we launched in 2021. Actually, to make it even more full circle, like not only was Nitya, like I'm very excited to invest in Nitya, but Nitya actually invested in Spice Capital. So she was one of my early believers and backers. And so it's really
Wow.
awesome to see like, just everyone supporting each other and seeing everyone's success happen in parallel. But as it relates to blockchain, I think I came into blockchain in a different way than most people that worked in crypto or blockchain, however you want to use those terms. I was working for an NBA player prior to launching Spice. Even before that, I got an offer from Coinbase, and I was actually deciding between like working at Coinbase in 2017 or joining an NBA player. And it's funny how like it all kind of worked out, and I ended up overlapping, and I'm glad I did the latter.
Yeah.
But my entry point to blockchain was more so from the consumer side. So
Mhm.
I was, like buying and selling Bitcoin, Ethereum. We were investors in Coinbase and Robinhood in my last job. And so a lot
Mhm.
of their mission was taking crypto and making it mainstream. And so
Mhm.
my lens into which I entered all of this was more from a long tail consumer perspective.
Right.
And the frustration I had, especially in 2021, where it was very, like the main cultural theme around crypto was NFTs, and maybe DAOs, which were, let's say, in the way they presented themselves were more like cultural phenomenons. I was like a moment in time. But all of these exciting new developments and new asset classes that were created, I was so shocked that there was no easy way to access them. Like you
Right.
had to remember all these keys, you had to have all these like weird Chrome extensions. I couldn't tell the auntie at the party, like, hey, I really think you should look at this asset class, you should put some money into it. It was way too complex for them to ever be able to access it. And so it was really paining me because here I was almost as a translation layer with Spice Capital going to my investors saying, hey, there's all this opportunity in blockchain. But then
Mhm.
in reality, nobody had the infrastructure to actually take it mainstream. And so I was sitting at this crossroads where I felt like who is going to build this? Like, this is so insane that there's so much money in this ecosystem, but no easy way to access it. And then I met
Mhm.
Nitya, and we met through some friends at an event. And when she let me know that she was thinking about the space, I was
You're
so
like,
excited
thank you. Yeah.
because it was like the most obvious need in the ecosystem. And she had this vision far before FTX where people realized the consequences of not building the way Para did, around non-custodial wallets. And what that really
Right.
means, to dumb it down, is, FTX was holding your crypto. Coinbase is holding your crypto. So if you buy one Bitcoin, technically like it's Coinbase who's like acting like a bank holding it.
Right.
And so if something goes wrong with Coinbase or something goes wrong with FTX,
There it goes.
there it goes. Versus what non-custodial wallets offer, it's a very clever mechanism. You can actually be the owner of the blockchain. The non-custodial wallet is almost like and I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's almost like a middle layer, an interface that
Hmm.
allows you to access your crypto instead of you having it stored with another financial service institution. So the key phrase that they talk about in like crypto world is not your keys, not your crypto. So you
Right.
own your crypto yourself. You can have your little backpack with your Bitcoin and move through the internet, move through different protocols, use your crypto and information however you want, but you're owning it the whole time. That was the vision for Para. It was like, how do we expand access to crypto? How do we enable more businesses to actually use this? And there's no way they're going to be inputting all these keys, have it be so complex. And so she simplified it dramatically with her product, even from day one. So it was like a very easy investment on my side because our thesis is very much like trying to be, we're trying to predict where the world is going. We're looking at tailwinds, and there were clear tailwinds of interest, institutional interest to use this. There was inflows of capital, but there was no infrastructure to let it scale. And so for me, it was a very easy yes, even though the market was fearing crypto, she was the antidote to that fear, right?
What I'm hearing as you talk about this, and I mean, I would not be a brown girl angel to not throw brown girl angels into the mix of this, is the idea of gatekeeping access feeling so difficult, whether it's brown girl angels, whether it's Spice Capital, and whether it's the need to build Para, because you're like, wait, why is this so difficult for people to actually access and flourish by being in the space? It's this democratizing access that is in what you build and in also what you both stand for and what you do. And Maya, I know this firsthand in the way you are very open about reducing check size for women to come into the fund and to have access. Some of the organizations that you work with, I believe last year, I think was it last year that you with Mercy Corp, you paired up with them to offer microcredit loans. Like, why is this so important to you? And like, what are you able to trace this back to, or what personal life experiences? Like, I'd love for either of you to kind of take this question first, because both of you, it's in who you are and what you're building, and that's just not by coincidence. So who wants to talk about it first? Like, why is this important?
So I started my career in fintech. I was working in lending and credit at a company called Blend that still powers mortgage lending and mortgage technology for all of the biggest banks in the US. During that time, I was getting my financial life set up.
Yeah.
And in that process, I applied for a credit card and was declined. And this was a somewhat ironic and shocking thing for me to understand because
Yeah.
it's you can be kind of so far ahead in so many metrics in terms of setting your life up the building blocks. I was literally working in credit, and to then recognize that there are systems that are gate kept and systems that just a lack of understanding how that you need many different lines of credit to build your credit. Like these are really basic things that we don't learn in school that are really something that we all have to figure out for ourselves. Around that same time, it was becoming really clear to me that even the way that credit works, so I was working on mortgage specifically, mortgages are a 30-year product. And over that 30 years, something like a 0.5% difference in an interest rate, that affects an entire generation. And I was recognizing that that zero point 0.5 difference will sometimes not be because of anything other than lack of access, lack of education, and maybe lack of time, general access barriers. Around that same time, I discovered blockchains. And actually, it was my second time discovering blockchains because I had first gotten excited about Bitcoin as an asset class
Yeah.
back in 2014. But in 2017, what really changed was this notion of smart contracts. And smart contracts were really the first time that you could have something resembling an open system for finance. And this means an open market for lending and borrowing, where you can see what the interest rates are. Everyone can open up this information on this immutable ledger and see the same rate. And understanding that that had a potential to just vastly shift humanity and shift people and potential was just one of the most exciting ideas that I'd ever come across. And that was what got me working in the crypto space. I was actually
Oh.
doing peer-to-peer payments work at that time. We were working on bringing basically financial access to a worldwide audience. So building on what Maya said about non-custodial wallets, another thing that is really special about non-custodial wallets is they're pure technology. And because of that, you don't have the historic kind of country-specific access rules or country-specific rollout that you might
Oh,
have.
I don't
Similar
think I knew
to,
that. I don't think I knew
yeah,
that.
so
Yeah.
so because a non-custodial wallet can be accessed by anyone with an internet connection,
Hmm.
the potential for access is much larger than, let's say, the person who can get approved for a bank account because they meet that minimum deposit threshold.
Hmm.
And so you really have this opportunity, this is what we were building in 2018, for globally kind of native banking access.
Hmm.
And in that process, I saw firsthand how terrifying it is to access this technology
Yep.
directly. So it's very powerful, but people are writing down private keys, writing down seed phrases. If anyone hasn't seen a seed phrase before, it's a set of either 12 or 24 words. This 12 or 24 words is only available in like 7 languages worldwide. So if you don't speak one of
Already.
those 7
Yeah.
languages, you're writing down really just something foreign
Yeah.
and hoping that you remember it. And really trying to like roll out those types of capabilities just made me understand that this was one of the most important technologies of our lifetimes,
Hmm.
and two, that without the right kind of UX and the right packaging and access, people were going to be left behind again.
Hmm.
And it was the same people that stood the most to benefit
Hmm.
from blockchain and from this new access and technology. So that was really,
The
these are
Genesis.
like
Yeah.
some through lines, but this is what just drives me to keep to basically build what we're offering every day.
I think that's so important, Nithya, because the desire from what I'm hearing from you to build Para was really around, again, democratizing access. It wasn't, I can see that institutions are really interested in. I mean, like, we're not, let's all also face it, we're not building a nonprofit out here. Yeah, of course, you're building it to make money. I mean, something that, we always say, let's just talk about that and just say it like that. But there is something really truly that feels very North Star of the, oh, this is bigger than let me help some uh, people with a lot of money make more money. It's bigger than that. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a brand new asset class. And what we've historically seen is whenever you have a new asset class and a new means of accessing it, that's
Mm-hmm.
an enormous new market that
Mm-hmm.
forms. And so to your point, like there is very much a market that
Yeah.
we are making a directed effort to serve. But through that, it is very much this like guiding point of, okay, like what is the impact that we're having
Yeah.
on people?
Maya, democratizing access. I actually think the first time I heard that phrase was through you when I started to talk to you in the early days of building Brown Girl Angels. And that phrase really stuck with me. I want you to dive into what that really means for you.
Yeah, so from my perspective, this whole concept of democratizing access, maybe, and I always think that people work on problems that personally, whether you like it or not, you can always find a personal reason why someone is
Yeah.
passionate about something. So I had to do some reflection on why am I passionate about it.
Hmm.
I think it's really just because, it's like growing up in a certain type of family where you see folks who are wealthier than you and you're always curious about how they got there. I went to an undergrad program that was very finance heavy. I really did dislike the culture of investment banking
Hmm.
and like even the traders, like it was this very broy, we're smarter than you, we're going to use big jargon
Yes.
style of cult and culture. And I felt left out, right? I felt like I know I'm smart enough to participate here, and I know you're using big words for sake of, why can't I be in these rooms, or why are you not taking me seriously because I don't fit your part, I don't dress, look, I'm not a square personality. And so it was this feeling of like feeling left out, left behind, or being looked down upon, which has always given me a chip on my shoulder. Like I want to prove people that you can look however and still build your wealth. And so for me, my first glimpse of that was Robinhood. They came to speak in my school, like when they were still in their beta, they had sent some representatives, and I was in this investment club. It was all dudes. It was so boring. I would fall asleep in all the meetings. But then when Robinhood came, it was this exciting startup.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, you can use your phone, right? Even just that was mind blowing, right? You have this vision of what investing looks like, and you have 12 monitors, and you're this like wearing a suit on Wall Street. And this guy is now telling me you can download an app on your phone and like make money. And that blew my mind. And I think that put so many seeds into my head. I became a power user of that app. Then later on, when I was working in an investing capacity, I got to invest in that company and Coinbase and others like it. And I had this thing around me where it's like, oh my God, the world is changing. Now anyone can participate in any of these markets. One of my favorite books actually is Charles Schwab's biography. It's called Invested. And it talks about how he almost, he was very responsible for moving people off of relying on brokers and making their own individual decisions. And he built this behemoth platform around that entire like democratization concept. And so every generation, I feel, and every decade almost, there's a new opportunity to democratize access, and typically it's around a new financial asset class. Like to Nitya's point, brings in new people, gives new people a chance to build wealth, lets new people become early adopters. And for me, it was very important that I participated in those new asset classes, but also I brought everyone around me along for the ride, as many people as I could, because the worst thing for me is knowing someone, not having them join the fun, and knowing someone and making, them feeling too scared or nervous to not be a part of it. When I started Spice Capital, it was very intentional for me to make sure I'm including everyone, not just for sake of, but genuinely, if you have new voices. And I see it even with some of the Brown Girl Angels investors, right? Some of the people who've never invested in a startup or in any new asset class before, they don't invest and they do it for the first time. There's so much pride and excitement.
Yes.
They're the best investors. I mean, they're repping whatever they're investing in. They're so excited. They're using the product versus most investors. I'm even guilty of this. Once you've done too many investments, you almost like, it's not, the novelty wears off, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't respond to the investor update. I would never do that in my first investment, right? And so it's like, I think just bringing people in who have genuine excitement, who've never gotten access, it's so fulfilling. And really it stems from me never wanting to feel the way the finance bros made me feel, like I was less than or I wasn't able to participate. And so no matter what I do in my career, I'm always going to make sure I have a way or an opportunity to bring people in. And we're so lucky that now there are tools available, including what Nitya is building, to actually easily include others. If I had this mindset 15 years ago, even before Robinhood was created, before blockchain, like nothing, it wouldn't be possible, right? There was no infrastructure to support it. Now it's almost like it's a must-have. You need to have that mindset to be successful, especially if you want to build something generational. Because if you're building something generational, you need to eventually, you can't just focus on the coastal elitists that are educated. You need to hit long tail, right? You need to hit the rest of the world. And so you're only going to get there if you have something accessible. And so it's all like kind of this self-fulfilling circle that I'm very proud to participate in and want to continue to bring forward.
You are a trusted resource within the investor and kind of ecosystem of, hey, early companies in crypto and blockchain. How do you think they perceive this idea of democratizing access? Things are gatekept by gatekeepers. Somebody's doing the gatekeeping.
I mean, there's obviously a risk, right? So the downside of bringing in someone new is it's not always rosy. So you only hear about the positives, and for every company that's successful, the hit rate to get a unicorn is like 1 in 50. So there's 49 companies that might not make it in traditional like Silicon Valley venture. That's my responsibility of educating others that are investing to explain like, hey, it's not all rosy. Hey, nothing is overnight. The overnight success you see on Instagram is at the time of exit. Like you're not seeing the other 10, 12 years. And sometimes it is that long, if not longer. And so I think the folks that are maybe against it have maybe had bad experiences or have brought their friends and family into an investment that went bust. And my kind of like pushback to anyone who says something like that, it's like, it's okay to take risk if you understand risk. So the worst thing you could do
Beautifully
is
said.
not understand and or misunderstand and then wrongfully take risk. But if you know that your investment can go into zero, you know that you should know the odds going in. And the crime or the lack of access is, and the reason why people justify not democratizing is they say, well, these are uneducated buyers, they don't really understand the risk. Well, that's an education problem. Like that's a solvable problem to me. It's a communication and education problem versus they should not participate entirely. And in
Right.
today's world, I think, information is it's like the easiest thing to share, right? And now we have
Yeah.
AI. So there really is no excuse to not participate. And you're seeing it, like you're seeing individuals, manage their own money on the financial side. You're seeing people become entrepreneurs more often. Like all of this is just because the world has been opened up. And so
Yeah.
there's not so much a naysayer can do to resist the democratization. It's happening with or without you. I think we're past that point, which is amazing and so freeing,
Mhm.
where there are people saying, no, we should keep it gate kept, specifically
Right.
in finance, right? Like crypto, and crypto has been a big reason for that because we all know, everyone knows one person that got rich off of buying crypto, and you can call them whatever you want to call them, but they took a calculated risk. And so you have to give, respect where respect is due.
Nitya, I would love to talk about something that I feel like founders, when they listen to conversations like this, always just like, yeah, but I want to know more. Go deeper on this, which is, okay, you've identified the pain point. You see that there needs to be a seamlessness and an ownership around your crypto, and you realize you need money to you need to raise. So you're in fintech, you're in industry. What happens? What was your journey around this, assuming, and I believe this was your first time founder and a first time solo founder?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a very interesting kind of rite of passage that every founder who decides to raise capital goes through, where
Mhm.
I mean, for me, a lot of how I approached that journey was recognizing that we were coming right off of a kind of large, maybe ballooning phase
Mhm.
in the crypto markets, especially. And for me, it was very important that in starting a company, this is a very long commitment. And one, it's having the conviction to build for the duration of time that is needed to actually solve the problem. And then two, finding backers, finding early kind of collaborators and partners and stakeholders that were aligned with that journey. And in that process for me, actually, a lot of the way the journey went was I had seen firsthand that there was this enormous latent demand for
Mhm.
this technology, and that user experience and access and developer tooling was really the gap there.
Mhm.
And from there, wanted to also really just understand the market and let prospective customers speak to what they wanted. And
Mhm.
so for me, I had this period of time where it was really just understanding the demand. And Maya was such a thought partner during that time period. I remember I spent a month in New York, and we were probably catching up like once a week, if not more, around what I was kind of like learning and what I was picking up in the market. Probably like of our first five customers, like three or four of them were intros from Maya. And during that kind of period of just really crystallizing the how, right? The
Mhm.
what was very clear from the beginning, like what is the problem, but how to actually go about solving it.
Mhm.
That's, I think, the really the nuance, and where you need to collect information. You need to be a student as well as kind of a visionary. And maybe people don't talk about that as much, but you do need to like
Mhm.
talk to people who have this problem. And I do distinctly remember the time period where this was starting to come together in there was actually this Notion doc that was not even complete sentences. There were a lot of bullet points in there. There was a lot of like kind of notes and observations and quotes. And I remember getting on the phone with Maya and just asking her like, "Hey, do you think there's something here?" And I remember, I think every founder has those the first push, and the first push towards like, okay, like this, like it's like we can get going. I think there's a combination of things. There's like your own conviction in the problem, your own conviction in how to solve it, and then there is also that first yes and that first belief. And I think that is really kind of what enables you, especially when you're solo, because there's this whole thing of like, okay, well, I think this is really exciting, but
Right.
like, am I in my own echo chamber? And when you
Right.
have someone who can really help you see that clearly, it's incredibly validating. And so a lot of that, like those very early conversations, were really what pushed me to decide to raise outside capital, raise our first rounds, and yeah, it's really it does take a village, even as a
Yeah.
solo.
Maya, this is something that founders say about you time and time again. I believe you even have like a group chat for all your founders in your portfolio companies called Spice Jar. Is that still?
We do have a group chat. Everyone would post their lunch and everyone would comment and gas it up. I have to like reflect on what Nitya said,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. So, like two core memories. One, we were introducing Nitya to like all these customers and other companies when she was still like before the company was fully formed or before there was capital. Um, Literally every founder I introduced her to or CEO of a company was like, Nitya's a genius. We need to hire her. And I had to be like, shoot, I need to fund her because like she's gonna go get a job. This is not
Yeah.
what I want. I was like, she needs to build a company. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
not it.
This is
And
not.
so I was, that it was funny because it would happen time and time again. And like it was insane. Everyone would say lines like, and you don't really hear this often, like she's the smartest person we've ever met in crypto or like in general. And so I would constantly get that feedback. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to poach her. Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
So I definitely had that incentive, which I maybe never shared publicly in the back of my head of like, we need to get her moving on this company
Yeah.
before someone like acqui-hires her before it even starts. So that's one. And then I think the second thing about being like
She's like, I raised capital, but a different kind of capital called a salary.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, over my dead body. No, I'm kidding. And I think, no, on the first believer point, I think it's so important. People don't talk about this. And I mean, sometimes I wish I had someone like this too. And I did have versions, but
Yeah.
I really think you need a cushion in order to dream bigger. If you think about some of the most successful people, sometimes it's, the idea and the resilience and the chip on your shoulder comes from being backed into a corner or feeling like there's a problem that no one's solving. So that's coming from almost like negative energy. And like the push to keep it going, the competitors, all of that, that's more negative energy. But you do also need to really go for it, someone or something or a village of positivity. And it's like you need a cushion so you can jump higher, right? Like you're on a trampoline, so if you fall, it's okay. And I've just seen in my career, at least, the companies that end up really, having the ability to dream big always have that cushion, and it could be family support, it could be financial, it could be an early investor. But without that, it is very difficult to get started and to keep going. And so that's something that's so important. And it's hard to articulate when I'm pitching investors. It's kind of this soft, unspoken thing, but just being there is like 85 to 90% of the job, and being that pillow that somebody can land on is very important. Like, go take the risk. If it doesn't work out, all good, I'll be there. And I wish more investors realize that, especially when they have tons of resources, and thought that way, because it would actually make their returns much stronger, if
Yes.
they
So true.
if they allowed their founders to dream bigger, and if they kind of like if you cut the slack a little bit, you need to let the founder go. You can't be so controlling, or you can't dictate. If you're the one dictating where the company goes, like why are you giving money to a founder? If I as an investor know more than the founder, then I should go build that company. Or the founder doesn't know that much, right? Like in that case, I don't think they're the expert.
Well, their motivations are different.
Totally, totally.
It actually brings me to a question. I'm just so curious, Nitya. What, like in building, what can you talk about a time that was kind of oh man, this is a rough spot? And, reaching out to Maya, I imagine, again, calls, and I'm talking about now you've started, now you're building, like kind of a little bit further along. Like, what's been a challenging time? Like, what's been a real difficult spot where you kind of lean back into the why I'm doing this and lean back into the, oh, there's something so much bigger here. Like, I'd love to hear an example of that.
Oh, this is such a good question.
You're like, there's so many. Hold on. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah. It's like last week. This was fairly early in our journey, but I mean, it was critical in that, like, without this period of time, the company would not exist. In our earliest days, so we had signed our first several customers, many courtesy of Maya, and had basically had the first versions of the product, and we were like really cruising. And we were heading towards a point of let's raise our first institutional capital. And the next week, FTX collapses.
Right.
And it was this insane moment for the market. It was this insane moment for crypto, the industry. I mean, even like the global macro and
It
finance.
crossed like the finance ecosystem because of the celebrities involved. Like it made it past the finance pages.
Exactly. And the ripple effects of that continued through
Hmm.
the second half of the following year.
Hmm.
So really just like unwinding all that it took a lot of time. But at that specific moment, I mean, there was this moment of like doubling down. And I remember a lot of conversations with Maya during that time period around this really just being such a critical moment for technology like Para to exist.
Hmm.
And this need to do this. And this, like, I had just this, like, extremely strong viewpoint that this needed to exist. But of course, I mean, when something like that is happening, broader markets will tend to be very fearful.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
a lot of conversations with Maya around just that importance and being able to kind of shape our own strategy through that. And yeah, and we got through that time period. And a lot of that was because of yeah, just because of one, recognizing that I've called Maya the VC whisperer before of I think a
I
lot
think it's
of
so accurate. Yes, so accurate.
I think a lot of founders, particularly first-time founders, don't always recognize how to put on the hat of the various stakeholders they're talking to. And I think it is one of the most important lessons you can learn. 'Cause now I work with a lot of earlier stage folks on their first pitches, like their first fundraises, and it's you have to recognize that when you're talking to someone, you have to understand their perspective and their point of view. And being able to enter into that headspace is going to only make you much more successful at conveying your point of view and meeting that person where they're at. Whether it's an
Right.
early customer, an early prospective investor, really anyone,
Mhm.
a prospective hire or employee. And I think just one of the most important things that I learned from Maya is being able to put on the hat of the person that you're connecting with and to really meet them where they are.
Incredibly said. Incredibly said. And to your point, it is something to learn just generally in life. Know your audience.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like,
Absolutely.
know your audience. And but why is that difficult? Well, because that's sometimes hard. It's like sometimes so hard to get out of your own head of something that you're excited about and be like, but wait, okay, let me try and be a little objective about this or try it. It's a hard thing to do. Would you say it's a practice skill?
I think one thing that makes it, yes, absolutely. I think it's a practice skill and it's kind of an intentionality thing. Like you just need
Mhm.
to keep remembering to do it.
Mhm.
I think what makes it particularly difficult for founders is really that as a founder, there is something that does not exist in the world. The status quo is that your company does not exist, and you need to convince everyone otherwise.
Mhm.
And because of that, like you are really putting on a lot of other hats, but it's not necessarily the case that those other stakeholders are putting on your hat. And that's just because the world as it exists and the status quo is one without your company. And so I think you need to be particularly good at this as an early stage founder, in particular, creating a new market, because you do need to recognize that not everyone sees the world and how it's changing as you do. And so I think in particular, it's really important. And you're often kind of convincing or evangelizing others as to your point of view. But you can't just kind of force that at people. Like you've got to meet them where they are.
Love it. Maya, because you really like live and breathe this pre-seed, early stage investing, I think it's especially useful for to be angel investors, people exploring it, how you think about these are some of the things I either consciously or subconsciously am looking for in the founder and the company when I decide to make an investment.
For sure. There's thousands of ways to make money, and there's thousands of ways to be an investor. So everyone has their own flavor. Our particular flavor, my particular flavor, is I think, I have a tendency, I like risk. I understand risk. And so I'm on the risk curve, like I'm all the way at the extreme. But what that means is if something, to Nitya's point, if something doesn't exist, I lean in, like, why doesn't it exist? And
Mhm.
there are optimists and pessimists. You can meet someone that when you talk about an idea, they'll say, well, can't Google build this? Why hasn't it been done? And there's some people who get really excited and say, okay, how can I help? Like, what do I do? Let me roll up my sleeves. Let's make this a reality. And so I think some of it's, finding people who naturally are not afraid of doing what needs to be done to make something exist in the world that has never
Beautifully
existed
said.
before. And that is sometimes it's a natural skill set. Sometimes it actually can be trained. So I have seen people who've done like a very traditional, like risk off, like do their duties career path and then jump into the deep end into something really bold, really big, really new. And like even maybe Nitya, you're a great example. Like you're like always top of your class, best universities, super well educated, and now are doing something what your peer group probably would consider risky. For me, what's really important is tailwind. Like, is there some tailwind? Because if you're, and there typically is there some reason why, or some domain expertise, some tailwind? They're all different ways of saying, like, is there data supporting what your vision is, and why is the founder so convinced that this problem needs to exist? Most people don't bother to ask and understand that why. If you actually took time to understand, it's not going to be a cohesive thesis, but it might be a founder's observation, their work experience. It might be a word vomit. It might be like, I can't even explain it, but like this, I am telling you, this thing is happening in this world and nobody is noticing it. And so some of it is just listening to the why very intently, letting someone come to you, letting them have their guard down enough so that you get the word vomit and you can piece it together to understand, like, why is somebody taking on all of this risk all of a sudden? Like, what is their incentive to go build this? And the best founders have a really strong why, kind of like the story Nitya said. And when you look back revisionist history, it always makes sense. You're like, oh, of course they built this company. It completely makes sense. It matches their personality. It
Right.
all the jobs and things they've done, the thread is makes sense. But in the moment, the story's still being written, right? And so
Right.
in that my LP answer when I pitch investors is it's always team, TAM, traction. So like, who's the team? What is the market that they're addressing? Is it big enough to raise venture for? If you're building a small business, you can make a ton of money But if you're not getting the same scale, I'm not the right capital provider for you because I demand a certain return profile that I promise to my investors. And then traction, like, have you done anything to validate yourself, which I think is less important for me to invest. It's more for you as the founder. Like, are you comfortable quitting your job with zero traction? Okay, go for it. But do you need a
Right.
little bit of something to feel good and feel conviction and go use that traction to pitch investors? Great, then go get some traction. And so it all boils down to the why. Really, that's the secret sauce. It's just listening to the why. You can ask that question. I mean, nowadays in my pitches, I kind of just ask, like, why are you doing this in 15 different ways
Right.
until I get the real answer. And 90% of the time, and it's sad to say, 90% of the time that when they really give me the honest answer, it's, well, I went to this school, I worked at this big tech company, my buddy raised $15 million for his startup, and like he's not that smart, and I feel like I could do it too. And that's usually the reason why. Um,
Right. Which is, yeah.
which is conditional, right? Like you want to
Yes.
be a founder when you have all the money, when you have all the prestige of it. What, like, if all these things line up, if you can get this dream co-founder, if you can get this, like $5 million from this tier one VC, if you can get this sort of office, then you're willing to be a founder. No way. You need to unconditionally love the problem you're working on. You need to,
Yeah.
like, the way you think about life, right? And so I'm looking for that unconditional, like, pursuit of something in a person. And that only comes typically with a very strong why.
Love it. Let's close this out and bring it back to Auntie and bring it back to the culture. Uh,
Auntie.
yeah, we have to. I mean, we all have the face of the auntie, so we know this the proverbial auntie out there. Okay, Nitya. I mean, Maya just touched upon this. You're working in fintech. You already explained that you had to explain what para was to your parents, but before that, uh, like you go to them and you're like, yeah, I'm thinking like take the job and starting my own company. What are your parents, your family? Are they from an entrepreneurial background? Were they like, what was the response? Like, what is the response generally to, hey, I'm going and starting in something in blockchain, which I'm pretty sure, as we talked about at the front of the interview, that they most probably, I shouldn't speak for them. Maybe they were experts in it, but I'm assuming they didn't know.
Yeah, I've always been incredibly lucky in this regard. So my dad was actually at Bell Labs back when the internet was first being created. My both my
Oh,
parents are technologists, and
amazing.
I think something that was always kind of instilled in us growing up was very much to kind of focus on things that have impact and have meaning and have purpose. I think that, yes, like blockchain specifically, and I had actually made that transition to another company, but I think another part of this is just growing up in the Bay Area. We saw even in my parents' generation, and Maya and I talk about this a lot. There were a lot of people in our community, our family friends, or even just people we knew who actually had, this is very common in the Bay Area, who had a first career in tech at
Yeah.
one of the large internet companies and then started a business after that. And there's all of these like incredible success stories of these like very, very successful bootstrapped businesses. Um,
Mhm.
and I think through that, um, had just always been around examples and role models of taking risk. And I think in every generation, what you're able to do looks different. And but just seeing really successful and inspiring examples of that. And so, yeah, I mean, while the like specifics were there was some prep before, right? The first few dinner
Yeah.
parties of like this is the elevator pitch that you can share with friends. I think I've been like very fortunate to be in an environment where uh, I think so much of like technology was built by people either that I knew or that my parents knew, and this is another wave of technology.
I love it. And we need to hear more stories like that, because this is, whether it's another parent hearing this or whether it's another founder hearing this is what we need to hear, that there's a celebration of entrepreneurship among South Asian women, and then there's a celebration of being the first to go out and build something big and dream big. On that note, thank you for your time. But before we go, we always pay it forward. It's what Brown Girl Angels does. It's what we stand for. So give us a shout out to a brown girl, hopefully, that's listening, who's going to be happy to hear that a customer shout her out.
Shout out to, so the company's called Brightland. They make olive oil, and their founder's name is Aishwarya Iyer.
Okay. And it's olive oil.
Yes. So yeah, Brightland, they're an olive oil company. They might do other things too. This is where
yeah.
But yeah, they make incredible olive oil for like cooking, like finishing.
Okay.
I didn't realize that the founder is a South Asian woman until somewhat recently.
Isn't that the best discovery though?
Yeah,
I've got to say, yeah, love it.
Amazing. That's amazing. She's plot twist. She's pivoting into ghee. I'm kidding. But that would be a good natural transition of product line. I always laugh when I see like there's like these turmeric startups and stuff, and it's like not brown people. I'm like, well, actually, I get jealous because I'm like, why didn't I do that? That's my first instinct. I'm not even mad at them. I'm like, damn, they beat us at our own game.
Which is why like people love Diaspora Co, right? Yeah. Like this is why, like Sana's Diaspora Co, so people are like, oh yeah, sporty being made by a brown girl, like amazing. So, but Maya, what are you thinking?
My friend Neha Govindraj, she co-founded a chain of fast facial spas called Glow Bar.
Oh.
And their whole value prop, and it might have changed over the years, but like the original value prop was to get a 30-minute fast facial for the working woman. And it's, as someone who doesn't like to invest a lot of time in beauty and wellness, like the idea of it literally being, I think it's even 25 minutes, like super efficient, packed in and out, but then you can go consistently. It's at an affordable price point. She has like over 20 locations now. Neha was a mentor to me growing up. She was like a few grades above me. And so she would always like, give me little hacks on like how to study for the ACT and, like make sure you do this when for your college apps. And then even my first jobs, like, oh, here's what you'll get from an early job. And so I've kind of watched her career. She's on her second company. Both are very successful. And I always like to shout her out because I've learned so much from her, even from childhood, like that now I reflect and realize. So, yeah.
I love it. I mean, this is what we want to see. We want to see an entire ecosystem of South Asian women shifting that narrative of that I think still kind of lingers around, that we aren't here to actually support each other, but we're actually here to tear each other down. And there is now plenty of stories of quite the opposite. I mean, Nitya, Maya, you're a shining example of that. So thank you so much. Thank you for the time. And yeah, I think this conversation is going to hit a chord for so many. So thank you.
For more insights around angel investing, South Asian female founder stories, and belonging to a community that builds and funds brown girl businesses, join the conversation online at Brown Girl Angels. As always, thanks for listening to Brown Girls Money Moves with me, Bhargavi Varma.